Story 1. I had coronavirus disease last year and still deal with constant fatigue and brain fog. It has been tough getting back to my usual routine. Story 2. Truly incredible that so many of you are experiencing it but never seem to have heard of long coronavirus disease. Our leaders are so irresponsible to keep prioritizing the short-term economy over the long-term well-being of humanity. Story 3. Still dealing with the loss of smell and taste. I enjoy heavily seasoned foods and spicy items, but I get almost no flavor unless it is on the extreme end of savory or sweet. Story 4. I have had COVID-19 twice. I experienced fatigue and heat intolerance. Before that, I worked in the heat all day. Now, I cannot be outside in the heat for more than 45 minutes without being drenched in sweat and on the verge of heat stroke. Story 5. Developed postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Also, strangely, cannot handle paracetamol or ibuprofen anymore. Short of breath easily. Story 6. I'm not sure it was coronavirus disease 2019, but in about 2021 I was sick. After that, I started to have problems with both short-term and long-term memory. I began to mix up words more often, completely forget what someone said, and even forget what I was doing while doing it. It has gotten better now but is still not perfect. Story 7. Well, my most permanent damage has been my friend's wife died at 39 from coronavirus disease in December 2020, and it permanently changed him into a husk of a man. The aftermath is I have to continually hear morons saying, "It was just like a cold. We didn't need to be locked down." Story 8. In 2019, my resting heart rate was 64 to 65. It has not gone below 80 since 2020. Story 9. I have had type 2 diabetes since 2017. COVID-19 made it much worse. I was sick for about 3 months, and now I have circulation problems in my hands and feet. It is not severe enough to be necrotic, but my hands and feet get very cold in the winter. This experience forced me to take my diabetes seriously. I have lost approximately 50 pounds and have maintained my hemoglobin A1C at about 5.5 for quite some time. Story 10. No idea because even mentioning long COVID to a doctor around here gets you a stink eye and a doubtful glance. Regardless, I had never had allergies or asthma before COVID-19, but after having it a few times, I now have both, as well as a bizarre level of fatigue at all times. Story 11. I had coronavirus disease 2019 in 2021, and ever since, I have been dealing with lingering brain fog and occasional shortness of breath. It is not as bad as it was initially, but it has definitely impacted my daily life more than I expected. Story 12. Weird, horrible smell hallucinations. Imagine the worst cat diarrhea under the bed at 4 a.m. But when you look, there is nothing there. I experience something like this about once every 2 to 3 weeks. This does not include the random bad smells I get throughout the day that have no connection to my surroundings. Story 13. My sense of smell never fully returned. Feels like my olfactory nerve is damaged. It is like listening to a string quartet and only hearing the violin most of the time. Story 14. I have a permanent cough and shortness of breath, but that could be from my weak heart. What annoys me is that I went from being an avid reader to struggling to read. Trying to read gives me high anxiety. I suspect it is some brain issue where I am struggling to decode words. I am trying to push through, but it has been several years now and I am not making much progress. It is very frustrating. Story 15. A coworker has permanent heart and lung damage. Before coronavirus disease 2019, he was an extremely healthy and active young man, the kind of person who would hike the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail for months at a time. After coronavirus disease 2019, he keeps ending up back in the hospital with heart attacks, pneumonia, and other serious conditions. It is very sad. Story 16. My daughter is permanently changed by coronavirus disease 2019. She had inflammation of the pericardium as a result, and an assortment of neurological symptoms. She is 32 years old but lives like a 70-year-old now. Story 17. My good friend developed diabetes from it. It is a real condition. Story 18. This is embarrassing, but here it is. I lost the ability to maintain a prolonged erection during sex. If I wasn't constantly getting friction, I would lose it. So imagine changing positions. It was the absolute worst. It's been some years now since then, and I've naturally recovered most of it. But every once in a while it happens. Like 1 in 25 times. Really terrible. Story 19. Hair loss. Yes. It started after my first severe COVID-19 illness. I have been tested for every possible condition, and it turned out to be COVID-19. It is unfortunate. Story 20. Mysterious stomach pains. Blood work indicates inflammation somewhere in my body. I have had every test done but received no answers. I have also lost 1/4 of my body weight. Story 21. My lungs have since then become filled with mucus at every minor cold episode, and my coughs hurt much worse. There is nothing worse than not being able to breathe because my body decided fool me once. And now the immune response goes into overdrive anytime something irritates the lungs. I experience shortness of breath during activities I could easily manage before. I have had autoimmune and blood pressure issues before, but they have been aggravated by COVID-19. Story 22. My child is now mostly bedridden from repeated infections. She is 11 years old. Her life is very difficult, and there is nothing anyone can do. Story 23. Not me, but my child. She used to walk 5 to 10 miles a day just because. She was bedridden for about 9 months. Now she has improved significantly, but she sometimes needs to use an inhaler despite no prior indications of asthma. I believe she has lung damage. She did 1 or 2 months of physical therapy, which helped her a lot. However, it has been 2 years since then, and she still does not have the muscle strength or endurance she once had. Story 24. I swear tinnitus. Ever since I got coronavirus disease 2019, it has not gone away. When I had coronavirus disease 2019, I could not rest because of it, and it has just never gone away. Story 25. I cannot smell much anymore. My memory and thinking capacity seem diminished. Story 26. Not me, but my husband has not been able to smell or taste much of anything since we had coronavirus in January 2022. Story 27. I did not know I had asthma. It was incredibly mild before coronavirus disease 2019. Coronavirus disease 2019 made it moderate, and I am still struggling with shortness of breath, regular wheezing, and coughing. My migraines also increased significantly and continue to be an issue. I have chronic fatigue. Story 28. I did not make the connection until I read all these comments, but I have had coronavirus disease at least 3 times. My memory is poor, my energy is low, I cannot handle sun exposure, and my sinuses are constantly congested. Story 29. I cannot believe we are all sleepwalking into a neurological apocalypse that will have lasting effects for generations, if we even survive climate change. Reading this thread and seeing how many people did not know they were suffering from COVID-19 is a massive public health failure. It hurts my heart to know what is being done to our species, especially the children. Story 30. Chronic fatigue is probably caused by coronavirus disease 2019 and is a recognized part of long coronavirus disease 2019. It is not just fatigue. Other symptoms include anxiety and digestive issues, which I have never experienced in my long life. Story 31. My cardiologist thinks that what has been called cardiotoxicity from chemotherapy may have been aggravated by coronavirus disease. Basically, a muscle in my heart is dead, and coronavirus disease may have caused it. I also have constant ear, nose, and sinus issues since my second bout with coronavirus disease. I care for an elderly woman who is wasting away because she never regained her sense of taste and smell after coronavirus disease, and it is terrible for her now. Story 32. After a study yesterday reported that each mild COVID-19 infection causes brain damage, when will the general public start discussing this as a serious concern? Are we heading toward a mass disabling event where many people's brains become inflamed, or is the damage so minor that it does not matter? Workforces are retiring, and new generations are not meeting the same benchmarks. Although we have artificial intelligence, it is not the same and it is harming the planet. Story 33. Those with the most severe damage are not present to respond to this question. Story 34. Still have some short-term memory problems. Very frustrating, but better than the alternative. Story 35. My brother, in his mid-40s, with no family history and otherwise healthy and active, developed diabetes about 2 months after contracting coronavirus disease. He fell down the stairs several times due to lack of sensitivity in his feet and blurry vision. I had to take him to the hospital to be examined and then had to persuade an endocrinologist to accept him as a new patient because they were all very overloaded. Story 36. It has completely disabled me. I have been off work for 16 months. I am preparing for a gradual return to work next month, starting at 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, to see if it causes a relapse. I got my first infection in March 2020. I had several issues, but the largest were fatigue and major dizziness upon standing. I tried to get help from my doctor, but she did not believe in long coronavirus disease at the time and gave me some vertigo pills. I slowly got better over the next couple of years, and by the end of 2022, I was in the best shape of my life, despite still having many issues with dizziness. I had to be careful about being in heat or moving quickly. Despite that, I was heavy lifting with a personal trainer, doing isometric strength training, practicing burlesque and pole dancing, and doing yoga, including athletic vinyasa and restorative practices. I did not drink alcohol or coffee, had great sleep hygiene, walked to and from work, hiked, paddleboarded, and lived an active outdoor life. I was reinfected in January 2023. Things went downhill quickly from there. I went to the emergency room with heart attack-like symptoms. Palpitations, chest pain, numbness and tingling down my left arm, and I blacked out. This led me to see a cardiologist who diagnosed me with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a form of dysautonomia common after coronavirus disease. I continued to decline despite treatment and was referred to a complex chronic disease specialist. By May 2023, I was off work after months of securing accommodations and desperately trying to hold on. I was diagnosed with myalgic encephalomyelitis and was told by an internal medicine specialist to accept my life now because I was unlikely to get better. About 50% of people with long coronavirus disease fit the criteria for myalgic encephalomyelitis, an incurable neuroimmune disease with no official treatments. I continued declining, and by December and January, I was bedridden and began experiencing sudden muscle failure. I could not lift my arm to brush my teeth or wash my face and could not hold a pen. This spiraled, and I soon could not sit up in bed or dress myself. My wife had to prop me up, and I could not lift a fork to my mouth. I could not tolerate light or sound and had to be in a dark room with only whispers. I spent days drifting in and out of consciousness. I knew I was getting better when I had enough energy to feel bored. I have made progress since then and live life with many adaptations. I use a wheelchair or a rollator when I am out of the house. I can manage short walks outside, but the cognitive load of walking inside places with fluorescent lights and ambient noise, such as a grocery store, causes intense neurological symptoms and fainting, so I need a wheelchair. I spend several $100s a month on prescriptions and supplements recommended by my doctor for mitochondrial support. I spend more on a specialty diet with no processed foods, sugar, or grains. My entire life has become incredibly expensive, and I cannot work. I do not know what I would do without my wife. I do many small things to aid in recovery, eking out 2% improvement here and 0.5% improvement there. I can read again. That was huge. I can go camping if someone else sets up and tears down my gear for me. I can sit on my paddleboard sometimes. I went to a gentle yoga class today for the first time in ages. I thought maybe I was ready to do a little bit. I sobbed in my car for half an hour afterward because I had too much muscle weakness to raise my arms above my head. I could not keep up at all. I spend most of my time being positive to neutral, forward-looking, and optimistic. I find joy whenever I can, practice gratitude, love and appreciate my community, and find ways to make my life meaningful. I have still lost so much, and sometimes the grief feels impossible to move through. It feels so unfair, and I absolutely rage as I watch people behave as though the pandemic is not continuing. Each month, I watch posts appear in long coronavirus disease forums as a new group of long haulers realizes the reason they are not getting better is that they have joined the world's toughest club because the damage of coronavirus disease is cumulative. If it did not affect you on your first or second infection, It just raises the chances of succumbing on your sixth or ninth. This disease has absolutely destroyed my life, and while I am hard at work making a new one, I will never be the same person I was before this. Story 37. My friend's 19-year-old daughter has been mostly bedbound for the last 3 years. Story 38. Nerve damage in the soles of my feet causes pain, especially when the weather is hot. Story 39. I get fatigued much faster than I used to when being active. I also think my sense of taste has diminished slightly. Story 40. Caught it twice. September 2022 and July 2024. After the first round, I noticed that I had short-term memory problems more often than before. I think the second round affected my taste buds a bit because some foods and drinks just tasted different. Thankfully, not the ones I love most. Story 41. Yes, chronic fatigue, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, autoimmune issues. Taste and smell are still affected. Brain fog is unbelievable. It is horrible. Story 42. I have had COVID-19 several times, but when I got it this past February, it had the longest lasting effects. My taste and smell were gone for a couple of months and still are not 100%. This is difficult because I used to have my own bakery business, and it is hard to make a product I feel confident selling when I am not sure if it actually tastes okay. Just last week, I made a pumpkin roll for my family and said I wished I had added more pumpkin because the flavor was not really coming through. However, my husband said it was actually extremely flavorful. I hope those senses are eventually completely restored because baking is my love language. Story 43. My heart hurts for all of you who are currently still suffering from these long-term effects. And for those of you who have lost someone dear because of this illness, my deepest condolences. I hope you may find peace one day. I strongly condemn every person and politician who spread disinformation about the coronavirus disease. Too many good people who deserved to still be here are gone forever because of selfishness. Story 44. I still have minor shortness of breath after all this time. It is frustrating when I am working out or even going up the stairs quickly. Story 45. I do not feel exactly dizzy, but I sometimes feel unsure of myself when walking. Story 46. It seems like I have lost my stamina. I used to keep running throughout a football or basketball game. Now I feel winded in about 15 minutes. Story 47. For 2 years, my hair fell out. I have chronic asthma. When I get sick, I remain ill for over a month, even with a cold, while my husband recovers in days. The brain fog is permanent but varies with hormones. For 2 weeks each month, I experience severe brain fog and cannot taste or smell. Story 48. Sometimes I struggle to think of the words when I am speaking. It is like the word is just on the tip of my tongue. I forgot the word evaluation on Thursday and had to describe what I was thinking of. I have found it is fine if it is rehearsed, but when I need to make it up as I go along, I lose words. Story 49. My wife's long COVID ailments officially became a postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and mast cell activation syndrome diagnosis. Story 50. My dad caught coronavirus at his bank in 2023 and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia 5 months later. He has been facing more health issues since. He was a teacher for 30 years and one of the most intelligent people I have ever known. Now he cannot recall his own memories or remember when he is supposed to eat and cannot even watch television because he cannot follow along. He also cannot remember why he needs to wear a mask, so he never wears one despite my explaining and demonstrating every time I speak with or see him. After he retired, he became an amateur gourmet chef at home, and now he has not cooked since the dementia diagnosis. I will likely never eat another home-cooked meal from him again. After a couple of months, his 10 remaining brothers and sisters stopped calling and stopped caring. Half of them denied he had any cognitive decline. They have stopped inviting me to family events because they expected me to stop caring about coronavirus. Coronavirus has ruined my dad's life. I wish people would pay attention and do their part to stop spreading it. If the person at the bank had just worn a respirator, we might not be in this situation, and I might still have the dad I knew. Story 51. I am genuinely wondering, for everyone here detailing what coronavirus disease 2019 did to them, if they acknowledge that they have long coronavirus disease 2019. Not to be snarky, But I know a lot of people who do not think they have long coronavirus disease 2019 when they absolutely do. These symptoms, especially feeling dumber, are long coronavirus disease 2019. Story 52. I'm pretty sure I have long COVID. I caught it in 2021 when I was fairly active in working out. I was going to the gym 3 to 4 times a week and took part in obstacle course racing and similar activities. Once COVID-19 hit, and it hit me hard, I continued with my workouts, but within about 6 months, I quit the gym because I just couldn't do it anymore. I have been sluggish and short of breath ever since. Last winter, I was trudging through some snow and experienced what I thought was a cardiac event. I went to the emergency room. Thankfully, it was not a heart attack, and all tests came back normal. I then had a series of pulmonary tests, a heart echocardiogram, and a stress test, all of which were perfectly normal. I still get winded as if I have run a mile when I climb a flight of stairs. The intensity of sexual activity has plummeted because if I go too fast or too hard, it feels like my chest is going to burst apart, I can't breathe, and it takes me roughly half an hour to fully recover. Test results have all been normal to excellent. Blood work is fine, but I feel like absolute trash almost all the time. Story 53. The neighbor I grew up next to is permanently dead. Too bad. Nice guy. He had just retired. He should be enjoying retirement with his family now, but he did not believe it was real. His wife barely made it out of the hospital. Story 54. I have had the latest round of coronavirus all week. It dropped me like a rock on Monday. Mild fever that spikes about every 4 hours. Nausea and burning stomach under the right ribcage. Upset stomach. Body aches. Exhausted. Today I am on the upswing. Ate real food. Oatmeal and an English muffin. Now here is what is weird. I have had major sinus issues my whole life. Had major sinus surgery years ago, which almost killed me. There are days I cannot smell gasoline, but this week I can smell everything. Story 55. My hair is much thinner after coronavirus disease hair loss. I used to have long Hermione-like hair, but now it is significantly thinner. The brain fog still lingers, which affects my vocabulary recall. Story 56. COVID-19 lung. I get winded walking on a flat field to play disc golf. Walking, not running. No hills involved. If you put a hill in front of me, I basically quit. Story 57. Reactivation of minor vertigo. Still have not been able to address it completely. Story 58. My boyfriend has permanent taste reduction. One of my college friends was one of the few very rare patients who had inflammation of the heart muscle after her vaccine and subsequently developed postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Anti-vaccination activists used her story to justify not getting the shot, but despite that, she still encourages people to get vaccinated. Story 59. Friendly reminder. Coronavirus disease 2019 is still mutating and circulating. I had it a couple of weeks ago, and my lungs still are not fully back to normal. Get your booster vaccinations. Story 60. A coworker aged 50 went for a walk in her village last year and found it so hard to breathe that an ambulance was called for her. She now has asthma, which she never had before. Doctors said it is from COVID-19. Another coworker aged 27 is mostly blind in one eye after a COVID-19 infection. I am 45 years old and have had long COVID-19 since July 2021, with many symptoms. Avoid COVID-19 like the plague. Story 61. It has been years since my first infection, and I have never recovered enough to return to work. It has destroyed my life. I have become very good at not moving in the morning when I wake up before I have time to assess how nauseous I am, so I do not start my day by throwing up on myself, especially before I know if I will have the strength to shower that day. I previously had my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder well managed with medication. It is much worse now and I can no longer tolerate stimulants at all, not even coffee. It left me with debilitating post-exertional malaise, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and a whole mess of other issues that keep me bedbound and homebound now. This is truly terrifying because there are no jobs that accommodate this level of disability, and we still live in a capitalist system that offers little support. Story 62. My sense of smell is terrible now. I seem to get ill much more regularly, whether it is bad headaches or coughs and colds. Story 63. I have lost most of my sense of smell. I can only smell very strong flowery things or burning items. My sense of taste seems better because stinky items do not smell bad. However, I cannot smell soured milk or anything rotten. I also cannot smell dog feces or my own flatulence. Story 64. Not me, but a friend. She still has reduced taste sensation and thinning hair. Story 65. Allergies. I have never had serious allergies to pollen before. I got COVID last autumn and have been severely affected by allergies this year. Story 66. Everyone is overwhelmed with stress and anger issues that they did not have before. Story 67. Developed serious dysautonomia and several other symptoms of long coronavirus disease. It has completely destroyed my life, and every bit of joy has been taken from my existence. But hey, fake disease, am I right? Story 68. A very mundane lingering effect is that the smell of fried foods slightly grosses me out. When I first contracted coronavirus disease 2019, this side effect was so strong that I couldn't even walk past restaurants that smelled like fried food without gagging. I met up with a friend at a restaurant a few weeks later, and someone near us ordered falafel. I almost had to leave and couldn't finish my food after smelling it. Now, a year and a half later, it's subtle enough that I only really notice it when I'm pan-frying something myself and think, "Ew, this smells weird." But it no longer affects my desire to eat the resulting food. Story 69. I get headaches and insomnia more frequently since having it. Story 70. Hair loss started after my first severe COVID-19 illness. I have been tested for many possible causes, and it turns out it was COVID-19. It is unfortunate. Story 71. Lingering brain fog, asthma, and sweats. I feel like I am in a daze a lot and find myself forgetting things as I say them. I was diagnosed with asthma caused by COVID-19 and still struggle with it 3 years later. My clue that I was really sick when I first had COVID-19 was how sweaty I was. I never used to sweat much, but suddenly I had chills and was drenched. I have experienced excessive sweating ever since, and I dislike it even more than the brain fog and asthma. Story 72. My husband had a stroke in 2020 after having coronavirus. He has some lasting effects from it and was awarded disability after waiting 3 years in the disability process. He has dizzy spells. The doctors have no idea why. He has seen many specialists. They all think it is related to coronavirus but cannot pinpoint the exact cause. The dizzy spells started after the stroke. We see his neurologist every month. Some days are okay, and some are worse than others. Story 73. Yes. I developed extrabronchioles under my lungs. They have a weird green-gray mucus that I cough up every once in a while. Tests determined it is the India variant of COVID-19. I have gluten ataxia. Look that one up. It is not fun. My lymph nodes around my esophagus swell if I eat corn or any variant. It hurts so badly I feel like I am going to die. This has been happening since October 2020. It seems to be my life now. Story 74. I have been afflicted with the condition of never going back into an office, no matter how many free lunches are promised to me. Story 75. My mom caught coronavirus. She said her teeth have never been the same. She says they all feel loose, like she can pull them out with ease. Story 76. I have developed gluten intolerance. Realistically, I have probably had a mild case of celiac disease my entire life, but for some reason, I only started experiencing severe gastric symptoms the week after I had COVID-19. I spent a year trying to diagnose and treat my issues before giving up gluten, and that was the solution. It all seemed odd to me, but my gastroenterologist assured me she has seen this before. Story 77. I contracted coronavirus disease at the end of May 2020. My sense of smell never fully returned. I have chronic fatigue, brain fog, and rapid heart rate. Peanut butter tastes like cigarettes. I cannot smell when I smell bad or when my breath smells bad. My memory is also worse. I am only 23 years old. Story 78. Not me, but my partner has had long coronavirus disease for years now. She has trouble concentrating, trouble following along in social situations, severe headaches, massive loss of fitness, and the classic brain fog almost constantly. Prior to coronavirus disease, she was extremely fit. She was repatriated from South America when it hit after having cycled from Patagonia to Colombia. She had high-pressure jobs dealing with multiple clients at the same time, working in refugee legal advocacy. Since then, she has not been able to hold a job or reach her previous fitness levels. She will get better slowly over time until she is almost able to live a normal life again. However, even minor colds and influenza will knock her out for months. She recently contracted coronavirus disease again at a work event 3 months ago and has been unable to return since. Her employer let her go due to poor attendance during her probationary period, which is destroying her self-confidence. The biggest impact is the lifestyle change from mountain biking and rock climbing daily, activities that occupy most of our time after work and during holidays, and having a big social group, to feeling shut off and unable to participate. Not being able to maintain what she considers a worthwhile job has removed a huge part of her identity. From first-hand experience, proper long-term coronavirus disease is a disability and should be treated as such. The stresses of living with it and supporting herself financially have caused additional health problems, including a stress-related stroke at age 37 and severe depressive periods that are very difficult for her to manage. All in all, coronavirus disease severely impacts lives and has potentially ruined thousands of people's lives for years to come. Story 79. This thread is very sad. The people commenting on this thread have long coronavirus disease and do not even know it. What will happen in 5 years? 10. Story 80. Not me, but I have a colleague who has a persistent cough. Story 81. The inner ear is poor at providing balance now. If I close my eyes, everything spins, although over time, other senses are adapting and compensating. Story 82. Not me, but I have 2 friends who developed diabetes after a COVID-19 infection. Story 83. I was 23 and working in an emergency room with very little personal protective equipment, so I ended up getting sick severely. At home, I thought I was going to die. I was passing out on the floor just trying to go to the bathroom. One night, I had serious neurological symptoms where my entire left side was completely numb, along with a pounding headache and severe sensitivity to light. I never fully recovered my lung function. I used to be able to run decent distances, but now I cannot. I also have a harder time lying down to sleep because I wake up short of breath, so I usually have to sleep in an upright position. Even getting a mild cold is much worse now. I have a cold currently, and my lungs hurt. I have also noticed more difficulty with short-term memory. I used to leave the house with everything I needed without having to go back inside multiple times. Now I have to be very diligent about writing notes to myself because I forget everything. At work, I take many more notes on my patients because I find myself repeating simple questions way too often. Story 84. Memory issues, severe anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive disorder that I had never experienced before. Story 85. I am now allergic to ibuprofen. I am also very tired all the time and do not want to do anything. Story 86. I have chronic fatigue. I get sick all the time now. I used to get mild colds 1 to 2 times a year. This year alone, I have been sick 4 to 5 times with much worse symptoms. My chronic pain is worse and I have more frequent flare-ups. I never feel hydrated no matter how much I drink, which is the strangest of all for me. I genuinely feel like my brain works slower now to process and retain information. Story 87. My memory is not what it was, and in general, I actually feel a little less intelligent than I used to. Story 88. I have lost half of my hearing. My right ear does not work anymore. Story 89. I had a few friends and coworkers who were against wearing masks and vaccinations die. I would say they suffered permanent damage. Story 90. After coronavirus disease, my menstrual cycle changed completely. It went from light with minimal cramping to heavy, with many clots and cramps that sometimes painkillers do not even relieve. I have heard of menstrual cycles changing for others as well. Story 91. I got what I thought was a mild case of coronavirus disease in June of 2022. I quarantined with loss of smell and taste and had a mild cough. I recovered and went on with my life. In August of 2022, I was walking home from the bus stop, a walk I had taken thousands of times. It was about half a mile to my apartment and took me about 8 minutes, give or take. That night, I got about halfway home and had to stop and rest specifically to catch my breath. I thought it was weird, but I had put on some weight and figured I just needed to walk it off. Over the weeks, it got worse. Much worse. My friends and family noticed, and I was really struggling to do basic things. Walking, bending, getting dressed all became a struggle, but I was in denial because I thought I was just fat. When I would take a breath, it was clear I wasn't getting the air I needed. I could feel it. By January, I couldn't walk 10 feet without feeling like I was going to pass out. I was falling asleep at work and had to walk very short distances very slowly, stop, rest, and keep going. Finally, one day my boss told me to go home or see the doctor. I took a ride share to my local urgent care, and before I could even register, they were putting me in a wheelchair. After taking my vitals, the doctor told me my oxygen saturation was in the 70s. He couldn't help me, so they called an ambulance to get me to the emergency room. In the emergency room, I learned I had been living with a collapsed lung and a paralyzed diaphragm. Finding no obvious cause, they blamed the bout of coronavirus disease I had in the months before my symptoms started. I was on oxygen and out of work from January 2023 to January 2024. My care team told me to be prepared to be on oxygen for the rest of my life. One of the strangest things I was told was that collapsed lungs are normally quite painful. Doctors and other people I met with a collapsed lung have told me this. I never experienced any pain, just discomfort from not being able to breathe. In the last year, I have regained some function in my lung and diaphragm, am off oxygen, and back at work. I just spontaneously started feeling better last October. I still have trouble with stairs, I can't sing like I used to, and I don't have 100% lung function. I probably never will. But I am much better than I was. Story 92. I suffered a minor stroke during coronavirus disease 2019. This caused me to have terrible memory issues that I deal with to this day. It also made me more prone to stroke issues later in life. I get confused so easily. It is very difficult. Story 93. I got COVID-19 during a dental procedure 3 years ago, I think. Before that, I was healthy, exercised regularly, had a good diet, never drank alcohol, never smoked, no drugs, no sugar, and no soda. I developed type 1 diabetes, which went undertreated for a while because the doctor did not believe that I was eating salads. I developed peripheral artery disease, which means I went from hiking 5 miles without noticing to walking 1 mile with leg pain. It is an effort to finish that simple mile. I developed high cholesterol. I developed high blood pressure. I developed mosaic lung disease, asthma, and general shortness of breath. Every 3 months or so, shingles get reactivated. I am waiting to see if my doctor approves a lymphocyte panel to check the status of my immune system. It might have been compromised. Oh, and between not being able to move and the insulin, I gained an extra 40 pounds, which makes all the above even more difficult to manage. All from one COVID-19 infection. Story 94. Hearing loss can occur with any virus. You should see a doctor promptly if you experience hearing problems after being sick. The doctor laughed at me when I said it had been a month. Story 95. All food smells rotten to me, and my lungs are functioning at 50% since 1 year ago. Story 96. I am pretty sure I have lung damage. My asthma has been noticeably worse, and I never seem to get a full breath. I almost passed out doing breathing exercises when I was in labor with my first child because it felt like I was hyperventilating. Story 97. My lungs do not work as well as they used to the point of having 3 ambulance rides in 2 months. I now require a steroid inhaler. Oddly enough, when I actually had coronavirus disease 2019, my lungs were not really an issue. It was only after I recovered that they started playing up. Story 98. I worked with a woman who developed long coronavirus disease and now has significantly reduced lung capacity. She used to play the flute in a semi-professional orchestra, which could be hired for events, but now she cannot play due to her lung capacity. Story 99. I developed tinnitus after getting sick with coronavirus disease 2019 in 2022. It has never gone away. Story 100. Yes, I have brain damage that appears to be permanent, affecting my ability to remember names and words. Story 101. I feel like my brain stopped working. I do not process things as quickly as I did before. I thought I was getting burned out at work, but I truly cannot focus. I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the medication has only helped intermittently. It feels as if it takes me 3 times the effort to complete what I was able to before coronavirus disease. I feel like I stumble on my words and often do not make sense. I have to take long pauses to gather my thoughts and carry out a conversation. Many of the things I once found so much joy in no longer do. I am painfully fatigued. It almost feels like a bout of depression in terms of the level of exhaustion and lack of drive. But it is not. I think my mind is failing me. Story 102. Memory issues and my immune system has deteriorated. I used to never get sick, but since then I get very sick all the time. Also, my lungs are in poor condition. I am extremely young and healthy, and I got it when I was 17. Quite unfortunate. Story 103. I have had brain fog since I had coronavirus disease. Took me a while to connect the dots, but once I did, it all made sense. It is frustrating because I was known as the girl with the good memory. Story 104. I just want to highlight how COVID-19 has different long-term effects for different communities. Inspired by the user who lost their father. I work at a Title I school in a rough neighborhood in Brooklyn. Many of my friends and colleagues grew up here and call it home. The rest of us, including me, are transplants. The years of COVID-19 were truly a tale of 2 different cities. I grew up very poor but in a stable, 2-parent, college-educated household. I am not rich, but I have a lot of educational and social capital. One could call me a coastal elite by my curriculum vitae. Maybe half of my friends and immediate network are college-educated, gainfully employed adults without families who grew up with a decent amount of privilege and only support themselves. Yuppies and creatives. They are not all white, but there is certainly a higher percentage of white people in my network than in my neighborhood demographics. A lot of them are those New York City types walking around on an allowance from their parents. I did not lose anyone I knew well to COVID-19. I do not know anyone in the above category who lost anyone. On the other hand, the rest of my friends and network are lower socioeconomic status locals. Some of them even have much more financial capital than me, but not the same access to healthcare and the ability to truly quarantine. My dog and I can stay away from people. My friends who live with 2 to 4 grandparents and many children and grandchildren cannot. My colleague and dear friend, a Puerto Rican New Yorker, lost 13 family members. Many, if not most, of my friends and neighbors who are regular people who grew up in Brooklyn on the poorer and browner end of the socioeconomic spectrum were deeply affected by COVID-19. Death after death after death. Even though we are not defined by these broad socioeconomic categories, whole groups of people experience challenges like COVID-19 in wildly disparate ways as a result. Something to keep in mind. Story 105. One thing I have noticed since the early coronavirus disease period is that I have gotten sick more often than I used to. Beyond that, I am experiencing brain fog and feel more tired than normal, but that could be my imagination. Story 106. A year in a wheelchair, blood clotting, unbearable, crippling headaches for 2 years, ongoing cardiac issues, lost my job, couldn't look after my children, still left with various symptoms. I was very healthy prior to my first coronavirus infection. It ruined my life overnight. Reinfections worsen my condition every time. I know many people with new health problems known to be caused by coronavirus, but they either do not realize or do not want to admit that coronavirus is slowly destroying everyone's health. This situation is totally unsustainable. We need to reduce transmission until they find cures, treatments, or better vaccines. Our children will not thank us in the future for allowing them to be repeatedly infected and suffer lifelong health problems. Story 107. I am disabled, cannot walk far, and need mobility aids thanks to coronavirus disease 2019. It has destroyed my life. I developed autonomic dysfunction, coronary artery spasms, and high blood pressure from coronavirus disease 2019. My blood pressure and some of the other symptoms have improved. I no longer experience daily chest pain. Story 108. I have severe fatigue, brain fog, constant pain, migraines, and heart damage. I have been tested for human immunodeficiency virus twice because the doctors keep saying, but this seems like human immunodeficiency virus. It is not. My immune system is severely compromised. I was one of those people who never got sick. I have 4 children. They brought home every illness, and I rarely caught any. My young child was diagnosed last week with eczema caused by viral persistence from a mild coronavirus infection. Previously healthy, he will now be taking immunosuppressive medicine because his immune system is attacking him. He had a rash from head to toe, and his skin is peeling off. It is painful. He also experiences fatigue, often falling asleep during the day to the point that he cannot make it through a day of school. Neither of us can afford to get sick again, but we have no idea how to manage that. No one around us cares. Friends and family, who care more about eating out than protecting us, tell us to stay home. I do not know how to keep my child safe and healthy when the world around us insists on continuing to infect us. We do everything we can to stay safe, but the resistance we meet is overwhelming. I have come to terms with the fact that we will most likely die at the hands of people who claim to love us and will not even react. Story 109. Changed my taste and smell permanently. I get tired and cold very easily nowadays. Story 110. Not me, but a close friend of mine. She has permanent reduction and change in her sense of smell and taste, especially for meats and spices. A month after her first case, she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which became permanent. She knows she had no problems before because she had just had her physical a week before contracting the virus. Story 111. I wheeze when I laugh sometimes, and for whatever reason, when I get sick now, I develop severe hives. I was already prone to hives beforehand when stressed or exposed to allergens, but now it happens whenever I am fighting a viral infection of any kind. It started the second time I got COVID-19. Story 112. I can't taste or smell as well as I used to, and it has been about 4 years. Interestingly, every time I get COVID-19 again or some kind of severe head cold or sinus infection, my smell and taste actually improve slightly. I experienced a complete loss of these senses for several months. When they returned, everything smelled and tasted unpleasant. That was one of the most depressing periods of my life, lasting almost an entire year. Eventually, the smells and tastes corrected but remained diminished. Certain perfumes people wear still disrupt my taste and smell for a couple of days when I encounter them. Because of this, I now dislike attending events with many people, whereas I used to enjoy them. Story 113. COVID-19 has been through our house a solid half dozen times. I have tested positive but so far have always been asymptomatic. As someone with asthma, COVID-19 still stresses me out. Does constant background anxiety or stress count? Story 114. Just a few months ago, I had multiple deep vein thromboses and a pulmonary embolism that 2 doctors said was caused by COVID-19 I had a couple of weeks prior. I had a computed tomography scan 2 weeks ago and still have lung damage. My leg keeps swelling, so it is possible my veins were damaged from the leg clots. I do not know how long these issues will last. I need a follow-up computed tomography scan of my lungs in 3 months. I am currently on blood thinners and have a hospital bill I am on a payment plan for. Story 115. I developed Graves' disease after I had COVID-19. It is difficult. If you ever get regular blood tests, ask for a thyroid function test. Story 116. I have coronavirus toes. They randomly turn black and have a painful burning sensation. Story 117. I hope people decide to start wearing masks because that is the only thing that helps prevent more infections. Story 118. I still can't drink Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or Sprite. Cherry Pepsi and cherry Coca-Cola were my favorite sodas, and now they taste like how I imagine window cleaner would taste. I miss the cola flavor so much. Story 119. My sense of smell never returned after I had it for a month straight after work shortly following the reopening from the shutdown. I have about 15% of my sense of smell capacity compared to before the coronavirus. Story 120. My family caught coronavirus disease in the summer of 2020. One of my children has anosmia, which is the inability to smell, and the other has acquired autoimmune hepatitis triggered by coronavirus disease. Personally, I gained 20 pounds that I have not lost, but that was more from the lockdown than the illness. My best friend was hospitalized for a week, and while he recovered, he still very easily experiences shortness of breath with very little exertion. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.